Welcome to the SIMSLink instructional video. My name is Ken Utley, President of SIMS, and the purpose of this video is to assist you in the understanding of the SIMSLink and how it fits into the line of products provided to your central station. The SIMSLink was designed to provide a workable interface from the central station to either a dealer or a backup central station location. Transmission is accomplished through either a modem dial-up or internet connection. Simply put, SIMSLink provides for the extraction of all or part of the SIMS2 database from the central station, transmission to the remote site, and then insertion into a remote database. This process can be accomplished in the reverse direction, allowing the remote site to maintain its own database changes remotely. The SIMSLink system requirements are a stable Windows environment utilizing Windows 98, Windows 2000, or Windows XP. Minimum memory requirements for the Windows 98 are 128 megabytes of RAM, while NT environments such as Windows 2000 and Windows XP will require a minimum of 256 megabytes. Other factors such as processor type and speed as well as hard disk technology will create a smoother and sometimes faster operation. SIMSLink will work with a variety of modems and IP connections simultaneously. The number of simultaneous connections is controlled by the SIMSLink system speed, modem transmission speed, and when the internet is used, the bandwidth of the outside connection. To facilitate our demonstration, we are going to later overlay both the remote and the SIMSLink server on our screen. The SIMSLink server's version will be labeled as a SIMSLink host, and the remote program will be identified as the SIMSLink client. Now let's take the time to examine the SIMSLink at the central station, its options, and its setups. We can start out by bringing up the setup screen. Within the setup screen, you'll see a series of tabs at the top of the screen. When we first open it up, the Program tab will be exposed. Here we can select whether we want the site type to be a central station or a dealer. Only the central station can be chosen if the security device is attached to the computer. Otherwise, on the remote side, only the dealer can be selected and the central station selection is grayed out. When the central station selection is enabled, the top group of tabs can be clicked on. Also notice the SIMS2 data directory can be chosen to point to the central station database. In the case of this connection, we can choose dial-up only, internet socket only, or both. Most central stations will run with both types of connections. Just note that a dealer can only access one or the other and not both. If we click on the Dial-Up tab, we'll notice that we've entered the modem phone number. That's the phone number that is dialed to the central station. Here I've selected Kenneth Utley as the only remote terminal's dial-up phone number. I'm going to bring it up by clicking on Edit, and here I can select the username, which is extracted from the operators within the SIMS2 database. The phone number that this remote location will be calling from, the account group assigned to this particular operator, as long as the group identifier is clicked. Also note the initials and password that must be used at the remote location is KLU 300. Since we're not going to allow merging or database to be sent from the remote location, the merge will be unclicked. Caller ID may or may not be unclicked depending on the capabilities of the line. In this particular case, I've also not clicked the Active tab, which indicates that the dial-up is not active for this operator. The event notification configuration may be sent to identify different significant events that take place at the central station operation whenever this operator enters into the SIMSLink transmission. In this case, Whenever Kenneth L. Utley logs in and the records are merged successfully or unsuccessfully, an email will be sent out to ken@simsware.com. Other selections for notification include a fax. We're going to click OK on this, and exit out of the configuration for the dial-up entry properties. Now let's go to the ports. Here's where we identify the modems that are connected to the central station computer. I have initiated a sequence of testing for all the modems connected to this particular computer. We only have one modem connected to here, and that will be located within COM2. As you can see, it searched through COM1, searched through COM2, found a modem on COM2, and then brought it to our attention. At this point in time, I could have added this modem if it were not here, or I can just simply bring it up, edit, modify changes that are made to the initialization screen, and so forth. Typically, the default entries that you will find within those fields are the correct ones. Note also that this particular modem is declared active at this time. So the SIMSLink program will command it to answer the phone and carry out the different sequences. Should I not want to use this particular modem, I could click the active button and remove the check mark, and then no modem would be present. There are sequences where we may have 4 or 5 modems active and want to disable some of those modems because of phone line troubles and so forth like that. At this point in time, I could also enter up the Port Settings tab, which brings up the more advanced capabilities. In here, we'll notice that the speed is set to 57.6, which is the top speed for this particular COM port. We should leave this alone and continue on. I'm going to click OK, OK, and close out this particular tab. Now note we're going to click the Internet socket. This is for connections through the Internet. Again, I've got the same name, Kenneth Utley. I can bring those up, but instead of having a phone number, I have an IP address. It is important for us to know that this IP address is from the other computer, the remote computer, and because his IP address will be transmitted into the SIMSLink, and if it doesn't match this particular field, it will be rejected. This is how we maintain our security across IP networks as well as in the modems when going the other way. At this point, we can also bring our attention to the fact that we'll unclick the merge button, even though this is active, because we don't want to merge any of this database into the central station, since this will be an extraction only from the central station. We could suggest also that we allow them to pick up service work orders, and we could go ahead and take care of our notifications through the email on the Internet access also. We'll just go on and click all these down, and then move to the event notification box, which there where we'll set up our SMTP server so we can actually transmit the emails, the reply to name, the reply to address. I could set that for some other address. The username. Remember, if you set these addresses up, they must be valid addresses. Station ID, I could insert variables here to make sure we can select the defaults if we want, the titles, etc., etc. This would be the header title, could be SIMSLink notification fax, and header sender would always be SIMSLink for talking sake there. Now, We'll now move on to the log. Most of the time we're only going to enable the exception log, so if we open up the logs we can see what's gone wrong, and also the debug log if we're working with SIMS personnel to find out a problem. But the system log should always be enabled. We will take a look at these logs later on in the demonstration, but for the moment we're going to move on. There is also the ability to auto-sync. This is very helpful when, let's say for the moment that this particular situation is a dealer. He comes to work every morning at 7 o'clock, so at 6:30 we want to do a synchronization with the central station, which will go and get all the latest changes on his accounts, as well as all the history right up till 6:30. And we want this synchronization to take place from starting at 6:30 all the way to 18:30 on 1 hour intervals, and repeat the action every 1 hour. So that at 6:30 we'll get a synchronization, 7:30, 8:30, etc., etc., etc. And typically this would be done Monday through Friday. Now, if this were a remote central station, we may want this to happen 7 days a week, to be done every hour continuously, non-stop, 24/7. And that, of course, can be selected in the same fashion we've talked about. Now I'm going to click OK, which will in turn close out all of our different things. We've visited all these different ports. And so now the SIMSLink host, or the central station end, is ready to do whatever is required. Now, as it sits there, it's waiting constantly for some action from a remote site to come in and either request to transfer data in or request data to be brought from the central station out to the remote site. Let's get a little idea about a few of the other things that are in here so we may get a complete understanding. Now also remember, the SIMSLink host program is identical to the SIMSLink remote side of the whole thing. The only thing that differs is when we're in setup and we choose whether it's dealer or remote site or the central station end. All of the other things take place. Now, changing those particular boxes will bring in and remove other gray areas and other checkboxes for further functionality. But let's just take a quick look at this. Under the file, we have backup and restore, so we can back up our configuration and restore our configuration. Under options, again, this is another method to get into setup. We can hide the program into the lower right-hand toolbox area, or to start it up minimized. Under tools, we have modem diagnostics so that we can actually go out and check out there. We can view the SIMSLink log. We can view the event notification log, clear them both, bring up our utilities, and execute the SIMS live update. Also on the help screens, we have the ability to open up and use the helps within this particular product, as well as any SIMS products. Access to the technical support internet and the about, which will actually give you the version numbers and will importantly tell you whether the Sentinel Pro or the security device has been detected. Before we go much further, it might be nice now to open up these tools and look at the SIMSLink log. As we can see from the log, it identifies different sequences that take place within the SIMS2 SIMSLink. Now, if I can move from right to left, I can see that it tells me when I'm grabbing accounts, tells me what times, tells me what sequences are acceptable, and so forth like that. This is very helpful when you want to go back and find out if they had a successful transmission, if they're actually calling you and asking you questions about that. We'll close this down now. And now I'd like to go to the next step, which is actually to bring up the SIMSLink at the remote end. Now you'll notice a second SIMSLink has appeared. This is an overlay over your existing screen and works with the SIMSLink client at the remote end. Here I'm going to try a few things, but I'll just bring your quick attention to, again in the setup, notice this time the dealer is clicked, and I'm of course pointed to a different subdirectory which might be out at the remote site. We'll close that down, and I'm going to initiate a sequence. Here I'm going to say rebuild my information at the remote site. So what I've done is ask for the remote site to go and interrogate the central station into the SIMSLink and get all of the information about my accounts, which in this case, since I've put 4 question marks in there and there's for the group identifier, it will extract all those accounts out of there. Here now, I've went and got that. It is now transmitting that information in there to me. Okay, it's compressing, encrypting, and moving right along. And now at the remote end, I've got back a message that says host account has been modified. So it's went and got all of the database from the central station and brought it back to my remote site and told me that it's all been done. This message will be left up here for 20 seconds. I'm sorry, I believe it's about a minute to let the operator know that that has been successfully completed. If he wants to get a little bit more information, there are logs in here. You can get receive and transmit queues. Here's a transmit receive log where you can see where we've actually started doing some of the information that was required. Here's our mark at 1853, which said get all records and then put records where it's come back. So we kind of get an idea of the whole thing. If we wanted to, we could open up the tools to get an idea. I can come down here and open them up at the central station end. So we can come down here and look at the log. And as we see, all these things took place, and I was transferring different records back and forth. It'll tell you how many contacts that it received for each one of the records. Surely I should bring to your attention right now that whenever at the central station end, let's say that it's the commanding end there, or the end where the database changes are done, if anything is done to the account that modifies the last operator ID and the last update and last time, that is the key that the SIMSLink looks to know to go get that record information and transmit it to the remote site. Now, when it transmits the account information to that remote site, it transmits that information completely. In other words, all zones, all contacts, all information is transmitted, and then whatever is at the remote end where it's going to be overlaying the data is then cleared and then reinserted into the database. One of the interesting reasons that I mentioned this about the last update, the date, time, and operator ID is that there are certain events that are written into the SIMS2 database that will not trigger a transmission to the remote end. For example, updating of the last date events. While an update change on the account that changes that last operator ID will trigger the transmission of the last date events and so forth to the remote end, it is not triggered unless a full update is done. I think you'll remember that, and I'll just bring back the other client just for a moment. When we went into the transmit, we had a rebuild which says go get me all of my accounts, or we have just an update which says go get only the accounts that have had a change into them. Some of you, if you're maintaining a backup central station, may want to execute the rebuild, and that is something that can be accomplished. If you're doing a manual update, and in this case I can go on and try this now, it's going to transmit that, give me only the updated information into the central station. And when that's done, it will come back and I believe it's going to tell us that there are no accounts to be changed. I don't believe we're making any changes at that remote end at this time. So at this time it's going to be retrieving all of the information at the central station end, preparing for that, and as we see, no accounts or history are available for you at this time, which means because I had successfully restored or brought back all the information to my remote site and then went back with an update shortly thereafter, there should be no changes in the information. Okay, great, and it automatically cleared for us. I'm going to clear this transmit queue here for a minute, and I hope I've been very helpful on this. We'd like to tell you that we appreciate your attention, and I hope you have gathered some of the basic concepts behind the SIMSLink.